Hello, my nerds, and thank you so much for tuning into this episode of the DM Zack Show. I am, of course, Dungeon Master Zack. Today, I'm chilling, hanging out, chatting with Ryan from Dice Populi. Ryan is a really cool dude. We had a ton of fun chatting about Eberron and, their show. It's a really good conversation. Ryan's super chill, laid back. Definitely made a friend here with this interview. And I also just want to give a quick little shout out to the Natural One podcast. They've been bombing around my Discord. They've been active. They've been reaching out to me and just talking and stuff like that. I got an interview scheduled with them coming up that I'm really excited for. But they've given me some good advice on my show, which I really appreciate. I really like getting constructive feedback and stuff like that. So when they, you're going to notice that my style kind of changes a little bit on this show. It becomes a lot more looser and relaxed. And you're going to kind of notice these going forward with a lot of my episodes. And I think it's for the better. I'm going to keep it this way. So, it's still the same old bullshit. It's, just chilling and talking, but I just loosen up a little bit more and become more comfortable. And I think that's really important with anybody out there that's, doing podcasts and stuff like that, that you should be able to do this. It's your show. Be comfortable with what you got going on. And, most importantly, I'm joined here with Ryan from Dice Populi, who got a hold of me through Twitter, and we decided to collaborate here a little bit and make an interview. So Ryan, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell people where they can find you.
Hey, I'm Ryan Mossbarger. I am one of the castmates of Dice Populi. You can find me. I typically am in control of the Dice Populi Twitter and Instagram. So if you want to connect with me in any way, those are good ways to do it. I also have my own personal Twitter that I kind of control much less because I spend so much time doing the official one. It's Ryan_MOSSB. And I guess if you want to find our podcast, it's available pretty much anywhere podcasts are provided.
Nice. I am waiting for artwork to come in before I start uploading to Spotify and Apple, just because I heard that it's kind of a tedious process to get through with Apple and stuff like that.
Oh, well, thank God. Colin, one of my castmates, and also the kind of, I guess he's pretty much a producer. He's handled most of the uploading aspects, and he also does a lot of the editing. Him and Matt, my other castmate, they do a lot of editing. So really, ever since we started, I've really just had to show up and talk funny into a microphone. So it's nice in that regard. They do a lot of the work, and they do a great job.
Oh, that's got to be so nice, kind of spreading out the work and stuff like that. Little bit of jealous of you guys.
Yeah,
it's just me doing all this shit back here. That's why I don't know. I edit my podcast. I don't even think I'm gonna edit this out though, right? It's just I just kind of chop up the little tiny chunks and stuff like that. Just because it's still so much work, right?
Yeah, it is a lot of work. Luckily, Colin and Matt kind of split those duties. They we worked on a previous podcast together called Calming Geeking Program, and it was kind of like a nerd news kind of back and forth program.
Oh, cool.
There was a time there where Colin was like, yeah, it'd be really helpful if you could learn how to edit. And I was I was looking at my times, the schedule of my work and everything else I had going on in my life. And I was like, yeah, it'd be helpful if I had any amount of time to do that.
I know, right? It is. Yeah. It's fucking hard. Cause I'm in the same boat as you where I work a day job too. Right. And my days are long. I usually put in 8 to 10 hours. And I'm a grunt, right? Manual labor construction type work. Right. So it's, I come home and I'm I'm tired. There's some days I like don't even want to get on Twitter or my computer at all. I just want to go crawl in my bed and go to sleep.
Oh no, yeah, I get that. Especially with everything going on right now. Like, so, like, long story short, like, I had a bunch of stuff planned for this year. So I was
Yeah.
supposed to get married this year. I still got
Oh,
married, but like, we had like a big wedding planned. We were supposed to be doing some international travel. We were supposed to be doing all this stuff, and literally on like March 15th, all of that stuff just got like flushed down the drain. And then we were doing all this damage control. So like like I feel like I have more time now just because I am working from home, but
yeah.
I'm also more stressed, I feel like, than I've ever been. And I'm like trying to like balance so many different things. Like what little time I do have to myself, I'm like desperately trying to do something like enjoyable.
Yeah, I feel you on that. You were supposed to get married this year. I was supposed to get married this year. When was your wedding supposed to be?
So it was supposed to be, I believe it was going to be May 28th.
Hmm.
I forgot it already because it got like blown out of the water
Oh man,
way
I don't even
before
know what
then.
day it is anymore. Like, what is it? It's like this whole year is just a
Oh, it
smudge.
was it was supposed to be the May 16th because it was going to be the same week as my birthday, and
Okay.
then it got moved.
Hmm.
We were going to do it in September 3rd, which was my girlfriend's birthday, but then
Oh,
like
cool.
nothing has changed, so we decided to cancel it, like postpone it indefinitely. But we actually had a small ceremony June, I believe 17. No, it was June 27th. Yeah, June 27th. I'm
Hope
still
your
new. I
wife
need to,
doesn't listen, eh?
yeah, she won't. She hates real play stuff. But no, yeah, I always get it confused between the 26th and the 27th because I took the 27th off and it just felt like a huge weekend. But
Yeah.
yeah, we got married that with like a small ceremony. So it ended up working out pretty well. But it's just been, and like we're also moving at the end of September probably to San Antonio. So
Oh,
just all this stuff happening, and like I'm just trying to work on a Twitter and do some podcasting stuff and like have a little bit of fun if I can.
yeah, man. I feel you. I was supposed to be getting married in October 16th, but we just feel like nothing's gonna fucking change by then. Very much
Oh yeah, for
similar.
sure.
And now as we're like kind of like pushing it back, we're like, do we really want to spend like $15,000 on a wedding? Like,
Yeah.
or do we like really want to spend all that money? Like maybe we should just spend the $300 and go to the courthouse. That sounds like a lot more of like,
Honestly, like what we did is we found a small winery that was, it was like we started talking to them when things were just starting to open up, and they were
mhm.
so cool. They didn't charge us a dime to have the wedding there. And
Oh,
then all
nice.
we had to do, I think we maybe paid a couple $100 just
They
for
didn't
food.
charge you a dime to
Yeah,
fucking
I
have
think,
what?
yeah. So it was gonna be really small. It was gonna be like, it was only maybe 15 people.
Yeah.
And I think they were just so excited to have people coming back, and like they wanted the publicity. And I think they said that they would do that if they were allowed to take pictures of the wedding and put those on their like Instagram and stuff. So I
Oh
think
shit.
they were just so happy that like people were coming back and doing things. So they kind of let it
Hmm.
slide, and we were able to like socially distance because there was a lot of space. So it felt relatively safe, and it was honestly a beautiful ceremony. I mean, it stinks that we don't get like the big party like with all of our
Yeah.
friends and family, but it felt special. So I would definitely do like a small ceremony. It it it's I don't let COVID win. Beat
Yeah.
it back whatever way you can.
Yeah, man. Just keep on like trying to, just adapt to the new lifestyle that we all got and stuff like that. I guess is like you did
Exactly.
small ceremony, socially distancing. It's shitty, but it is what it is type deal. You know what I mean? Like just
Yeah, yeah.
ex- accept it and move on and stuff. Yeah, we really don't know what we're gonna be doing. It's been bouncing back and forth between like canceling it or just doing small stuff or whatever. So, but
Yeah, I get that.
yeah. So, well, enough about weddings and stuff like that. Why don't we start diving into the? Do you actually want to say anything else about your podcast or anything? Or
No, I think that's about it. Give us a listen. We're real fun. We're not super serious. I mean, we kind of vary between being pretty serious and not being serious. There's a lot of goofs. There's a lot of lightheartedness. Um, I've heard from a lot of people on Twitter and other places that it is a like actually funny podcast.
Oh,
There is
nice.
there's a lot of real play and a lot of other podcasts. They can be funny and they can be good, but like sometimes, like I think ours is very consistently good. Our audio quality is always like really high rate. So it can be something you kind of have in the background, which is nice.
Yeah, very nice. Nice. Glad to hear that. Well, when did you first start playing tabletop RPG games?
So I actually have a funny story about that. I
Nice.
started when I was 6. And it
6?
lasted about, so it lasted when we were 6. We were playing second edition homebrew, I believe. I think we just had like one book to spare, and I was like the kind of the younger kid that was bugging my brother, who was like in middle school at that time,
Yeah.
bugging him to
Second
like play.
edition. What year is this roughly, if you don't mind me asking? Second edition, that's
This would have been
like
like 1998, probably.
okay. Okay.
Something around those lines. It could have been like, that's my thought, that it was second edition. It's in all possibility it could have been first edition.
Mhm.
Just
Mhm.
like whoever, because I don't really remember the book so much. I never even got really to hold it because I was like a pet character for my brother. I had the
Holy
same
fuck, that's so funny.
so I had the same stat block that like if you were a druid or whatever, you would have for like your pet. So I didn't have a full sheet.
That is
And it
funny as
wasn't,
fuck.
and we probably played a month or two, and then our parents found out. So my mom and my dad found out. And I guess this wasn't like heavy satanic panic time, but I guess they had like,
No.
that was their understanding of Dungeons and Dragons. And
Okay.
my mom sat us down. Like I remember vividly, like my brother and me sitting on the stairs as she's like pacing back and forth, telling us like, I will not have devil worship in my home. I will not have, some nerd losers in dark robes sitting in basements, like killing
Summoning.
hamsters, like
Yes.
all this stuff. Like, and it was like a 15 to 20-minute conversation of her just like
Oh, holy
reaming us
fuck.
out for being like devil worshippers. Well, so we never, that was it. Like we didn't touch it again, or at least I didn't touch it again. My brother may
Yeah.
have. Um, so I didn't touch it again until college. A friend of mine was like, "Hey, I'm going to start a Pathfinder game." I got really into it. I spent like a week
Mm,
making my character. Game never
Pathfinder.
happened.
Oh, bummer. Hey, isn't that the fucking worst?
It is. So game never happened, and then fast forward another year or two. A friend of mine, I used to work in a machine shop in my college, and I used to work with a really close buddy named Nick, and we decided he was going to a different campus because I went to GW, and there was a separate satellite campus in Ashburn, Virginia, that they did a lot of the like larger engineering experiments at. So
Mhm.
I went over there one day and he's like, "Hey, do you want to like go over to this game store? It's called Huzzah Hobbies, and play some D&D." And I was like, "Whatever. Like I'm here for like a couple hours. Let's do it." And like from that moment, I was so stuck on it. I had so much fun. And then
Yeah.
we did that for like, God, I was taking an hour bus out there for like 3 months, like every single week.
Holy shit.
Hour there, it would go from like 7. I would like run out early from work, get on the metro because I live in DC area, go to the bus stop at GW, get on the bus, wait an hour. It would, for the
This is
for
a
the
legit
ride.
adventure to go play
Yeah.
D&D.
We'd start at like 6:37. It would end at like 9:30. I would then get on that bus, take the hour trip back, get home probably 10:30 or 11, and then wake up to be at work at like 5 o'clock in the morning. So it was
Oh,
like it
fuck.
became a laborious thing. And then the bus schedule changed and I just couldn't do it anymore. So I, for a long time, was only watching Critical Role.
Mhm.
That was like my lifeline to D&D.
Okay.
And I was like starting to get into some podcasts, but I wasn't really into podcasts at that point. And like it was such high quality at that point that you were almost like, oh, I can live off this a little bit. And I got so frustrated just watching that I was like, fuck it. Never DMing before. I was like, I'm gonna DM. I'm gonna make my own game. I'm gonna do this. And that's kind of how it's been ever since then. Like I've been like, if nobody's gonna DM, I'll DM, and I'm gonna play the games that I want to play. I'm gonna do the stuff I want to do. And then I was doing that for a couple of years. And then a friend of mine Colin kind of contacted me. I know him from another podcast. He's like, "Hey, you want to be on a podcast?" And I was like, "You mean like a regularly scheduled Dungeons and Dragons game? Of course, I will be on it 100%."
Yeah. Don't even care about the fucking podcast aspect. Hey, you're just like a scheduled D&D game? Yes, please.
Yes, yes, please. Where there's like actual stakes to not show up, like you have to be there, like enforced. Hell yes, I will be there right away.
Yeah. You know what's talking about scheduling a little bit here. I kind of treat my D&D games or my party or group like we're almost like a hockey team or a sports team or whatever,
Mhm.
where like game day is game day. Just like, you know what I mean? Like come and play when we're scheduled, please. That's all I ask, really.
Yeah,
Like, you know what
yeah.
I mean? Cuz I find if you run with a loose schedule, then it
It
just
gets loose. Yeah.
it gets really loose. Or if you don't enforce it either, like I don't want to say I'm an asshole, but like, you know, if I had to kick out one player who I just noticed a pattern, right? It was, oh, I can't make it to session 0, whatever, that's all right. Made it to session 1, then it was like miss session 2, miss session 3, miss session 4, made it to session 5. And I was just like, you know what, sorry, like, you know what I mean? Like this isn't
Yeah, yeah.
what we're after and stuff. Um, and yeah, I guess being part of a DM is fucking stamping your foot down a little bit on that when it
Oh, for
like
sure.
curbing those problems. You know what I mean? Because you're kind of trying to provide this atmosphere for all your players, right? Like, you know what I mean? Like you kind of take on that responsibility of running the daycare, and your table's your little
Yeah,
daycare. You
yeah.
know what I mean? And you're like protecting
Try to
all your
keep everybody in line.
yeah, you know what I mean? Protecting them, making sure no one's like stabbing each other with pencils and shit like that, and like he's just
No,
keeping
yeah, I
them.
get that.
Yeah,
Um,
so it's frustrating when you have, you know, the problem player that comes in and disrupts it, and yeah, you got to be you got to be like, hey man, get the
oh
fuck
yeah,
out
I'm
of here.
I'm I'm with you on that. I haven't had to kick out any players or anything, but I'm very much on that. Like we're gonna. So my current schedule is I have a game every other Tuesday that I switch off with a friend of mine. So we do
Hmm.
two different campaigns, and then I have a game on Thursday, and it's like we're gonna play regardless if you're there. If I have like at least
Yep.
two people at the table besides myself, we're playing. Like doesn't like I've made a few caveats if there's something like I have made this specifically for a character that's not going to be there.
Yeah.
Um, but like for the most part, like we're gonna play, we're gonna have fun, like regardless if you're there. It's not gonna be a big like I try not to make it a big deal. And
Same. Same.
and honestly, I think if you try to schedule things like loosey goosey, people things happen. But if you have like, oh, we're doing this Tuesday, we're doing this Thursday, people make their schedules around it a little bit more.
They do. You know what? It's awesome. The schedule for me, man. Like I think we've had to cancel one game, and that was just because everyone was like a little busy, and like life
Yeah,
happens,
life stuff. Yeah.
right? And I think I've had one player who's missed like one game, and that's pretty much it. And like, so we're pretty much playing every week, like
Yeah,
consistently.
I get it. Yeah, I've even started a lunchtime game because I'm working from home and I have a lunch hour.
Oh,
So I started a lunch game. So for 1 hour, I DM. So I have a quick shout out to Goodman Games. I have Original Adventures Reincarnated into the Borderlands,
hmm.
which is like a OG AD&D game. It was like a starter adventure you'd get in a box set.
Oh,
Um,
cool.
so
Is it
it,
like
but
a
they
little one-page adventure or something? Like,
Oh, it's actually it's a pretty big book. They used to make like pamphlets, so it was a pamphlet that came into it. That was probably maybe 30 pages, something like that. But they've expanded it out and made it in 5e rules. And it's like honestly, it really works. If you feel like D&D is getting too much for you or you're having trouble scheduling it, make it an hour. Because if you do an
really?
hour, you have enough. Like you
How do
think it
you
would be
run an hour?
counterproductive.
Yeah, like how do you run a 1 hour game?
It sounds like it doesn't work and it sounds like you wouldn't get that much done, but that's the whole point. You're only going to get like you can have one battle and some like excess exploration. You can do a couple social encounters, you can do a handful of things. But because it's only an hour, like it's easy to schedule. Everybody can fit an hour in sometimes, or for the
Yeah.
most part. And then two, it's like it's an appetizer. So when you have it, you're like, dang, I want to play more. Like I need to play more, and they want to
Yeah.
play the next hour. So I do a lunch game Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I've had like really good luck, besides the few times where there's just like a Friday that nobody can do it because like it's a holiday weekend or whatever.
Yeah.
I've had a
Yeah.
lot of luck. And the best part, if it's only an hour, is if like you only have two people, like at the table, it still works because if there is going to be like a boss, there's a way you can just kind of extend it out and still have it be fun and not kill them. So like, oh, they can explore this like part of this tomb that's, just before the boss battle.
Yeah,
Um
yeah.
and like they can have fun, they can have their own little moments. And then the next one where there's like more people involved, then you throw them at the boss. Um it's honestly really good. I highly recommend doing an hour game. If you're having trouble like scheduling stuff, or you just like if there's a group of people you just so desperately want to get together for a D&D game, but their schedules are so cranked up, like honestly, 1 hour game and it's amazing.
Yeah, I never really thought about a 1 hour game before. I honestly didn't even know you could run a 1 hour game. Like
So,
obviously,
so you're gonna learn more about me. So I am a old school aficionado. I actually collect a lot of Dungeons and Dragons books from like back Dragons pamphlets, but I have a ton of those original books. And part of that is kind of like digging in the history. And what a lot of times what I found out when the people that were making Dungeons and Dragons back in the day in like
yeah.
the 80s, they were at work, so like they could play test a little bit, but what they did during their lunch breaks was they would play the game. They'd have their sandwich or whatever and they'd play a game and roll dice.
Oh,
And that's how they would do it. They would do it every single day for an hour. Um that's how they moved their stories, that's how they play tested, that's how they came up with their ideas. And honestly, I have to say it's a really good way to do it. Um
I've never thought about it like that, but yeah, I could totally see these, dudes just chilling, nerding out, playing some D&D like on their lunch break,
yeah.
like out on the sidewalk or something, who knows, but like yeah, it was that's really really cool. So you collect old school books, eh? Like I've always really been interested into the history of D&D and D and stuff like that. But one of my favorite things is like the first edition monster manual and like the pencil drawings of the
Oh,
old
yep,
school
I got
monster.
that. I got 2 of those actually. And I think there's an interesting story behind that too. I wanna say it was Gary Gygax's, like, niece did a lot of those.
Okay.
These and there was, like, some random kid in town that was kind of artistic, and he, like, was like, "Hey, if you do a bunch of these, I'll pay you, like, $5." So that they were legitimately drawn by, like, child labor.
Gary Gygax, eh? Just work, work. Whoosh.
Exactly, yes. Um
Yeah. Oh man, that is crazy. Like, I love those drawings. Like, they're so good. Like, I don't know. I just
Yeah.
like the original Beholder. You know what I mean? Is just like
Oh,
so.
so derpy looking, yeah.
Yeah.
But it's good though, it's so
Yeah.
good.
I,
You could tell somebody in their basement drew it.
Yeah, 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 exactly. And so when I'm building my counter sometimes, because I use Roll20 now, is I'll go and find the first edition drawings of the monsters that are available, and then I'll like make tokens of them,
That's
and
pretty good.
then I let my players try to find out what the monsters are from the first edition tokens, because some of the monsters do look like completely different.
They're yeah, wildly different. And like first edition's got some pretty decent art, but once you start getting in like AD&D, like the art just like is such a huge like cosmic leap. And they used to pump out so much high quality fantasy art. Like it kind of inspired that whole 80s trend of like painting your van. Like those were the same guys doing this artwork. So and
So what
it's beautiful. It's so good.
I love the dude, art is 100% how I get my inspiration, like, for games. Like, I collect Magic the Gathering cards, not because I play Magic the Gathering. I just think the artwork on Magic the Gathering cards is so
Yeah,
awesome, and
beautiful.
I could just sit there and I can stare at it, and I'm like, boom, I can throw that in my world somehow.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, the art is insane. So AD&D, that was after first, like, how did the editions break down?
So this is a rough, and there's probably some errors because I'm not like a historian. I'm just a collector.
Mhm.
So it started out as chainmail, which was a non-magic kind of like battle simulator because Gary Gygax was super duper into tabletop like war games. So it
Okay.
started out as chainmail. He made a magic supplement, and then actually another guy, Arneson, he came in and created something using that system where it was more like one-on-one um kind of like there's mystery, there's puzzles. He act like Dave, I believe his name is Dave Arneson. He's actually been credited at this point for actually creating D&D. But he was like working with Gary Gygax, and Gary Gygax was like, I'm gonna take this and make it into something else. And then he made it Dungeons and Dragons. And then from
Okay.
Dungeons and Dragons, just that then came it kind of splits because he kind of screws Dave Arneson at this point. So there's like
Oh no, is Gary Gygax a bad guy?
he's kind of a bad guy when it comes
No.
to so he's a fine guy, but he's also like 80s like business bad guy. He kind of
Yeah, it's
stole
like
it
the
from somebody
McDonald's
else.
story.
Yeah, so there was like two branches from from D&D. One became advanced D&D and one became basic. So Arneson was put in, I believe, don't quote me on this. This could like I could be messing this all up. But basic was put in charge by Arneson. It was basically given nothing. It had all the worst stuff. It was Gary Gygax's, and that's basically the stem of which current
Okay.
D&D comes from, is from advanced. So advanced went into Advanced Dungeons and Dragons second edition, and then that morphed into, after Wizards of the Coast bought it, third edition, and then that became fourth edition and then fifth edition. So basic kind of like withered on the vine, and that was the whole point. Like Gary Gygax wanted to kind of get rid of
Okay.
basic. He wanted to like edge people out of the company, so he put them on basic, because there was a basic rule set and then there was an advanced rule set, and advanced is the one that took over, because why would you want to be basic? You want to be
Yeah,
advanced,
yeah.
right?
Yeah, we ain't no basic bitches, right? Like,
Exactly. So it's kind of fascinating in that way, and like there's so much like art and books. They made so much back then. Um, and actually, people kind of were getting angry at TSR because they were making so much material, and they were like almost there was like a old version of paywalling. Like, hey, we came up with a bunch of different classes for like barbarian, or like different subtypes and all this other stuff, because they'd have like the handbook for barbarians, but you'd only get so much information in the book. So if you wanted to like build up your characters in like different ways, you'd have to buy the next book, and then they would put a
oh,
bunch of stuff in the next book and then the next book. So like to be a DM back then, you'd have to have hundreds of dollars worth of books if you wanted like all the options, all the stuff.
yeah.
It's kind of crazy that like back then.
That is insane. I know that in the older editions of D&D 2, it was played vastly different. Like they do all their roles out in the open. There wasn't really a DM screen, and like only the dungeon master rolled for the players and stuff like that and everything too.
Yeah, so there was. I mean, I guess it probably depends. I'm sure some people did it like hidden and some people didn't. But yeah, the DM would roll for everybody, and they would also do a lot more secret rolls. So if you didn't know what you were supposed to be looking for, the DM would roll a perception check for you, and then he
Oh,
would tell you if you saw it or not. And I don't think
interesting.
I don't think that happens as much anymore, for
No,
sure.
definitely. I never roll for my players. I've never done that.
Yeah,
Like
no.
maybe I always roll to see if someone's seen them or something like that. Like a bad guy, I won't. But yeah, I've never really rolled for my players. That'd be weird, I
Yeah, it's kind
think.
of wild, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So like, have you ever played older editions? Yeah, I know you talked
I
about 2E or second edition or
Yeah,
whatever, but
I've played a little bit of 2E. Um, I would like to, but it's very hard to get people into older editions. I'm sure if I like looked hard enough, I could find another, like I could probably find a play group. There are some play groups that are specific for like older style games.
hmm
But I just haven't had the time. I do want to. I would like to get into. I mean, I play Pathfinder, which is basically 3.5, but a little bit better.
yeah.
Um, and I wouldn't mind doing some 2E and maybe even some 1E. Um, but it's just like finding people, and then like a lot of this stuff, it probably exists online in some format. But I don't know if because I don't know if you play Pathfinder, but there's kind of like an online compendium where everything is pretty easy to find.
hmm
Like
I
rules
don't.
wise. Oh, you don't play?
No, I don't play Pathfinder. I've always wanted to though.
Yeah. So Pathfinder is really cool because it's relatively open source, and they have a website where you can kind of like all the feats are there, all the different classes, all the subtypes, all the archetypes, all that other stuff. So if you wanted to start out with just some dice, you could do it on that website.
Oh,
I
nice.
don't know if anything exists like that for like second edition. Um, So it could be pretty difficult to get a table going with second edition, I feel like.
Mm. And second edition is their newer edition?
Oh no, I just mean like second edition, like Dungeons and Dragons, you know?
Oh, I get what you mean now. Okay, yeah,
Yeah,
no, I
yeah.
don't think anything. Well, there might be something like that on Roll 20 or
Yeah,
something,
maybe, yeah.
but yeah, you would be definitely combing, and you'd probably be picking up a lot of older players, right? Trying
Yeah,
to
for sure.
go back and relive their youth and stuff. Um, yeah, that's in. Pathfinder is very number heavy, isn't it? Like you're doing a lot of it's a lot of stats and math and stuff like that, isn't it?
Yeah. It's it's um it's like 5e but with a lot more dice. So I think one of the most elegant things and best things that Wizard of the Coast did with 5e was just simplify everything, because there is a lot of unnecessary complication in something. Even going back to like Pathfinder, it's good, but even then it's a slight simplification for earlier editions. In earlier editions, there wasn't just a perception check. There was a spot check and a hear check. So
Oh,
you could like, I want to spot that, but he's like, ah, you can't see it, but maybe you hear it, but you didn't roll. So there was all these different checks, and I think even in Pathfinder for like knowledge checks, instead of just being like nature, arcana, history, blah, it's knowledge nature, knowledge arcana, knowledge engineering, knowledge
oh
dungeoneering.
wow.
So it's all these kind of big things. There's kind of just like a huge list, and one of the other things with Pathfinder, there's just like the rules are more dense, and there's your stats are changing all the times.
Hmm.
So like if you change, like, so say you get enlarged or reduced, your stats change. Like your actual physical stats change. Like your dexterity will go up or down, and your strength will go up and down, which
So
then
like
results in your AC changing and results in a bunch of other stuff changing. So you have to like constantly be reworking your stuff all the time.
yeah, like what does a character sheet look like? Is everybody's character sheets just erased right through or like
Kinda like there are places for like your temporary stat that you have to like fill in and you can erase. So you're not mucking up your actual true stats too much. But
yeah,
um,
that's an do you like that? Do you like the stats and the numbers more than the nice streamlined simplified version?
to be honest, I like them both. It's kind of, I like how easy 5e can be sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially as a DM. I don't
Mhm.
really DM Pathfinder for that reason, because it is a little more complicated. It's a whole new rule set that I have to like lock in. But it's really easy to DM 5e. It's really easy. Like once you've made a character with somebody in 5e for the first time, they can pretty much make a character again and have everything more or less correct, because there's just
Yeah.
not that many variables. Like, oh, you just have, there's like 5 things you need to look up and you've got your character.
You know, a
And
thing that I think is like super underrated about the D&D player's handbook or whatever is how it's a simple when it comes to picking your weapons and your items, how it's a simple you get this or this.
yeah, exactly.
You can take this or this. And I think that's I don't know if a lot of I've never really played a lot of different tabletop RPGs, but I don't know if that's in there, but I've always really enjoyed that
Yeah, the
thing they've added in there.
simplification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because well, have you ever heard of that syndrome where it's like I don't know what it's called, but like you
Oh,
go
yeah, I know what you're talking about.
yeah, you like walk into an ice cream shop.
Indecision, yeah.
Yeah, and if they have 50 flavors, you stand there and you're like, I don't know what I want. But if they only have 3, you're like, okay, I just want that.
So
Right? Like,
Pathfinder is for the person that looks at those 50 flavors and then stays there for an hour trying every single one,
oh,
and then,
no,
like, asking for a
no.
mixture of different flavors. So
Can you
in
imagine
Pathfinder, oh, yeah, so
being
what were you gonna say?
can you imagine being behind that person? Like,
Yeah.
you'd be like, holy fuck, let's go.
So the cool thing, so I really like the smoothness and the easiness of 5e, but with Pathfinder though, because you have all these variables, you have all these little things you can tweak. You have background, you have your character race, and in those character races, there's small little things you can change. You have way more feats than you do in 5e, and you get more of them. And there's all these different archetypes for each class.
Oh
That
no, that sounds like ugh.
So what you can do is, if you have a character concept, you're like, hey, I want to play like a really crazy like physical fighter that uses their fists, but I also want them to be like a religious warrior, and I want them to be able to do these things. Like I want them to be able to do like this wild thing and this wild thing. there is probably a sequence of either archetypes you could take or multi-classes that you could take and feats that you can take that you can basically get where you want relatively easily. Like a lot of the archetypes for Pathfinder are like mixtures of two classes without having to actually like make a third class. So like there's rogues that can do a little bit of magic. There are priests that can like punch people really good. So if you have a character concept that would be very difficult to make in 5e, it honestly might be really easy in Pathfinder. And then
Hmm.
you can have you can really sculpt the character down to something really specific, and because it can be so specific, you can have a lot of variety. Like you can even if they more or less have the same type of character, like a paladin, two paladins in Pathfinder can be so different as to be almost unrecognizable as the same class.
Oh, see, I can just
um,
see the appeal for that from a player's perspective.
there's a lot of
Like,
replayability.
yeah, that's really yeah, I like that. I can see the appeal 100% from the player's perspective there because, like you said, no two paladins are gonna be the same. Whereas
Exactly, yeah.
in D&D, like sometimes, I mean, I've had it where shit, I'm like my rangers and my druids are so similar that they're almost playing the exact same character, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah. No, for
um,
sure.
and yeah, so with that, like, what do you prefer? Do you prefer being a player or do you prefer being a DM?
There, I think there's moments. There's different moments that feel different if you're a player or DM. There is something really satisfying about creating a situation for your players that like takes them all aback or surprises them, or you can see
Hmm.
that they're like, if you make a puzzle and they're all kind of like struggling with it and you can see the joy in somebody's face when they like figure it out. I don't think you can get that as a player, but there's also some experiences as a DM that you just don't get as a player. Like you don't get to like best God as the DM. You do get to do that as the player. There's some moments when you're a player where you can tell the DM has thought of something very specific to solve this problem, but you, seeing it from a different perspective, have figured out a different solution, and it's easier or more kind of exciting way of doing it, and then you do that and everybody is blown back by that. And I think
Oh yeah.
there's some experiences. I honestly think everybody that plays should try DMing because there is some
Yep.
satisfaction in creating a place for people to have fun. And I also think a lot of DMs that get stuck DMing, they need to try and play more because there's just some experiences that you're going to learn from. Like both playing as a DM and playing as a player, you're going to get more experience that makes you better at both. Um,
Yeah, that's a
I
really good
highly, yeah.
answer. Yeah. Like I don't know, I get caught I consider myself a forever DM. Um I do enjoy playing though, but I'm one of those players that just kind of likes to be there for the show. You know what I mean? Like I'm super
Hmm.
invested at the DM's table. I'm always super invested, but I'm the kind of guy that just likes to hang out in the back and just be like, "Oh shit, that was really fucking cool, man." Like, you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
and do my roles and stuff like that, which is strange because when I'm a dungeon master, I'm super descriptive and animated and stuff like that. But I think
yeah.
that's why I enjoy being that kind of player because you know what I mean. I just get to hang out, but I'm still getting my D&D fix. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I'm a little bit different. I am super in like I always fight the urge, but I always want to be a bard because I like to be the one. I like to be the one like trying to smooth talk. I like being social. I like talking to people.
Yeah.
So I'm always like at the front. And I think if you listen to the podcast, I'm always like kind of there trying to say something or quipping or like trying to say a joke. Um, and it's just kind of who I am. So I'm down to like be in the front of the show. But I do enjoy players that kind of like sit back and like take it all in.
Yeah.
Because you can tell that they're enjoying it. And if you act like sometimes you'll be worried, like, hey, are you doing okay? And they're like, no, this is amazing. I'm having so much fun.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly. I was just gonna say that, right? Like I remember I've had a few players that are like that, right? And I'm like, man, I don't think they're enjoying it. And then you ask them, they're like, no, I'm loving it. I'm loving it. But even then, you're still like, they're just saying that 'cause they want to be nice and they don't want to hurt my feelings. Like,
yeah, but then like you have a puzzle that requires like some kind of knowledge from like 4 sessions ago, and then they're like, "Oh yeah, I remember that." And then
yeah,
everybody else is too busy talking while you're talking, and they're the only one listening sometimes. And I think it pays off. Um,
Yep. I actually watched a video from Matt Koval. Do you know Matt Koval?
Yeah, I know Matt Koval. Not
Yeah, he did.
personally, but I've seen his videos.
Yeah. So do you know Matt Koval? Anyways, can you get him to come on my show? But yeah, so he actually has a really good video out, and it's different player styles. And I think,
I think I've
have you
seen
seen
that,
that
yeah.
one?
I think I've seen that. It's been a while, but I've seen it.
Yeah, where it's like he talks about, the person that's I can't remember what they're called because it's been a while for me too, but like the person that sits back but still is having a lot of fun. Like the tactician, the guy that loves the grid and the combat and like,
Yeah.
strategizing and stuff like that. And then you got your role players, and then you got your guys that he calls them like mad scientists, where they're just like they like to come into the world and get into their character, but just like poke shit and see like how the world
Yeah.
reacts to it, which are really fun players to have in your in your game, because they're the ones that kind of go screw with shit that's like maybe on like an ancient ruin, right? And then
Exactly.
they spring out the monster.
I will say that my character in the podcast is it's very much the kind of poke at the world.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
my character, his name is Cult. He is a necromancer, and
Oh, cool.
he's chaotic evil. And
Oh,
that's kind of a weird line to walk down, because chaotic evil can be, as a DM, I can tell you, chaotic evil can be a super big pain in the ass to deal with.
well,
Like,
yeah.
oh, my story is that you're going to save these children. Oh, you mean kill and like zombify these children?
No, no, no,
No,
no,
no, no.
no.
um, so it's always fun to play, but it's honestly really fun to play because it's in my character to kind of poke at the edges of like what's happening, like
Hmm.
what is the selfish route here. And I think I've found like his voice to the point where he doesn't I don't he's not like he's not an uppercase bad guy.
Hmm.
He is a lowercase bad guy. Like he's selfish, but like I always try to ground my characters in the fact like bad people exist in the world. Like Jeff Bezos exists and he has a wife and like people that love him, and he has people that he loves, but he can also like crush a million workers a day if he really wanted to. So
Yeah,
that's how I view evil in my like kind of perspective. Like
interesting.
they still like people, they still want to be friends with people, but at the end of the day, if it comes down between something they want and like an innocent person, they're just going to do what they want. So that's how I play Cult. Like he loves laughter, he loves jokes, he wants to make friends, but at the end of the day, if like the dice are on the table, he's going to like blow a townsperson's head off and then like make them a zombie. Like if he needs it, he's going to do it. Like there is no moral quandary. Um
What's funny is your character sounds like he would fit perfect in, I don't know, the world of Eberron.
oh yeah, I love Everon.
Yeah,
So
the
I and that's kind of how my character creation and a lot of the stuff I do as a DM, I start to do through the lens of Eberron, because
yeah.
before I honestly, when I first heard of Eberron a couple years ago, I did not like the concept. I was like,
What?
oh, so it's like steampunk or
Oh,
whatever.
I was just gonna say that's the first thing. I have a few players that are in my playing for the very first time in Eberron. I like to send my players like inspirational photos and
Yeah,
stuff like that, and of course, Eberron does kind of have like a steampunky vibe to it or whatever.
it does.
But
Yeah.
I all of a sudden I get like, are we playing a steampunk game? I don't want to play steampunk, and I'm like, no, it's not. It's fucking Eberron. It's cooler. Like, but
Yeah, it's so I had this idea. It's like, oh, it's steampunk, like D&D. Like that's fine. Like nothing against steampunk. It's just not something I really want to like. It doesn't like light my like mind ablaze with the possibilities.
yeah,
But when I started reading into it, I started reading into a little bit, and then I saw that they were coming out with a book when they announced it, Exploring Eberron, or when they first put, was it exploring, not exploring Eberron, but they first put out that book
the
on
PDF
DM's
one,
Guild. Yeah, the PDF. Well, they,
Explorer's Guide to, or not Explore. Yeah, the
yes,
Explorer's Guide to
Explorer's
Eberron.
Guide. So I was like,
Yeah,
oh, I'll look into it. That's interesting. It's a book that I don't own. I'm just gonna look into it. And then I started reading, and I started reading more, and then I started listening to Keith Baker's podcast,
the
and then I
Manifest Realm.
started to collect the books and started reading the books. And I was like, I get it. Like I can understand why people like this. There is so much more nuance
Yeah,
to this setting in how it handles characters and how it handles villains, how it handles good people.
it's
And
very real life. I
it's
feel
very
like,
real life. There on one of his podcasts, I believe, they talk about good and evil. And he said, and I think I'm going to mangle it. It's not a direct quote from Keith Baker, but his basic premise was up to the point before Eberron, there was there is a first level spell that any cleric would know called Detect Good and Evil. And if any minor cleric could figure out who is evil and who is good in the room, why are there not why is there no nuance to that? Why, like, if you went to a dinner
Mm-hmm.
party and somebody got poisoned, wouldn't you just pop that out and find the one evil person in the room? So
Yep.
there has to be more nuance to the world than we've been like leading into it. Because if you think about traditional fantasy, everybody's good or neutral, and there's like a couple little pieces and parts of bad people around. Like, there is a bad guy, but he's the evil king that rules the village with an iron fist, but everybody else is just kind of struggling underneath. But
Yeah. Yeah.
in a nuanced world, like, yeah, there's going to be bad people, but it doesn't mean they're going to like murder you. It just means they're going to like steal your paper in the morning, or like they're going to like not pay people well, or they're not going to tip the right amount. Like, selfish is a form of evil, and it
Mm-hmm.
makes sense if there's these kind of ability to like sense evil in such a easy infallible way. Like, there has to be more nuance to this, and then he created that nuance, and I think it works so much better. I think
I
evil. Yeah,
yeah.
go. Yeah, what were you gonna say?
I was just gonna say I love it. Like honestly,
Yeah,
I love it.
like evil characters. I think the idea too that evil characters can do the right thing for the wrong reason just as easily as a good character can do the wrong thing for the right reason.
Yep.
It makes sense to me. Like, self-interest, mutual self-interest isn't necessarily just like between good people, and like an evil person could still want to seem like a good person and do the right thing. So it adds this whole layer of nuance, and the way that they handle characters, I think, in race and stuff in Eberron is so much more nuanced than like, oh well, orcs are evil because of Groomsh, and
Mm-hmm.
they're always going to be evil, and there's always going to be like a little piece of them that wants to murder everything in the room. Don't worry about it, don't think about it, they can't change. And then in Eberron, it's like, oh, let's not necessarily, there's nothing like that. Like,
Nope.
orcs, like, there's different tribes of orcs, and they all have their own individual like culture. Like, an orc from this area wouldn't really have anything in common with an orc from this area other than like skin tone potentially, or like the fact that they both have like orcish features,
Yep.
which makes sense. It's more like the world. Like, you won't, like, if I go to like LA and meet somebody, and then I meet like their long lost relative somewhere in like Europe, they're going to be completely different people. They're not going to be like exactly the same, you
Yep.
know?
Yeah, no, so Eberron's my favorite world. I run 2 games in it. I'm gonna be running more games in it. And I just right off the bat, like I put in the moral quandaries of it, like just introducing that morally gray line that my players have got to walk, and maybe not every decision they make, maybe this decision they make is like the right decision right now, but it's not. It still it might have ramifications later on down the line, and like an example of that is to introduce them because they actually got ripped out of Faerun. So what happened was
Okay,
is
yeah.
I ran the Lost Mines of Fendelver module for them, and then at the end I just added a little bit of a spin to it, and I essentially had Lords of Dust traveling around through, I don't know, universes. They ended up in Faerun, in Phandalin, and they were like in cohorts. Is that the word?
Cahoots, baby.
Cahoots with with the Black Spider from Phandalin.
Okay, I
And
like that.
yeah, and so my players, what they did is when they killed the Black Spider, they actually ripped a portal from him, or like he exploded into a I don't know, like a portal or a dimension thingy,
Yeah,
sucked
yeah.
Phandalin in, and they landed in the Demon Waste where the Lords of Dust are.
Oh, I like that.
And so they were there, and they're like, and I also introduced a new player at this time who came into my game, and she's from the Demon Waste, part of the Gosh Kala. Do you know them?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, so she
Gosh,
was
Kala.
yeah, Gosh Kala. So she was part of their tribe, and I gave her a little bit of the history of the world, just enough that I think a person in that area would have.
Yeah.
Um, so like she knows about the Last War, she knows about the Mournland and stuff like that. But that's pretty much it. A couple of dragon marked houses and stuff like that. Um, but she was basically the info dump for them, rather than me just info dumping the new world on them.
Oh,
And
that's clever.
Yeah, and it's worked out really well because since she doesn't know about Eberron either, it just like led to natural role play.
And that
You know what I
works
mean?
out so well because people in Gosh Kala, they're basically just in the demon wastes trying to
Yes,
stop people from leaving. So they wouldn't
exactly.
know everything about
Yeah,
like
exactly.
they wouldn't know everything about everything like maybe somebody from like Sharn, a really metropolitan city, would know.
Yeah, well, so that's just it, right? Because the Gosh Kala, they let people in. You can come in, but you
You
can't get
can't
the fuck.
leave.
You can't get
Can't
out.
leave.
So, like I've had people who have like fled. They just keep on fleeing right from the Mornland. They don't even know what's going on. They just keep on fleeing. They run into the demon waste. Blah blah blah. Whatever. But yeah, so she's just kind of like been naturally giving them these people them like information of the world. I didn't give them anything because I wanted to be natural. But the first encounter they had once they kind of left the demon waste and got into the world a little bit
Mm.
was they went into a dungeon where there was lizard folk there that were trying to kill them. But the lizard folk were actually protecting a gatekeeper seal, and they were killing the
Oh,
adventurers because they thought the adventurers were coming into
like
uh
destroy a seal. Yeah.
yeah, so like, and I made sure that the lizard folk didn't have any of the same languages as them, right? So that they couldn't communicate. And I just wanted to see what would happen here. And they like, yeah, they went in. The lizard folk were like killing them. Well, they actually fired first, right? I wasn't gonna have the lizard folk fire first. I let my players fire first. As soon as
Okay.
they
Yeah.
fired, lizard folk went after them. They started killing each other. Blah blah blah. Anyways, they killed all the lizard folk. They go to the town and they tell the town's guard there, and the guy's like, "What the fuck did you do?" Like, what?
Yeah. Yeah.
You just opened up a gatekeeper seal, and they're like, "Oh, well, what's that?" And so I explained to them what it is, and they essentially just let a beholder go loose into the world, and now there's going to be like a bunch of Dalkir coming and pouring
Oh,
out.
that's so good.
But
Yeah.
they thought they
That
were doing good though. That's the thing, right? Like they didn't know, and once I hit that, they're like, "Oh fuck, like we failed."
Yeah,
Right?
that's
Like,
that's such a good lesson, like just a crash course into Eberron because they're used to that traditional Forgotten Realms, like if it's not humanoid, it's bad type of logical thinking. When in
yeah.
Eberron, there's so much more nuance and layering to how the world works and how everything is set up. Like, that's honestly what I think is the most genius thing that Keith Baker layered in is that
Mhm.
just because a character or a person looks monstrous does not mean that they're a bad person.
Yeah.
Like
I
I the whole idea that like goblins had a huge like the was it the Dakani that
yeah,
had
the
this
Dakani
huge
Empire.
yeah, they had this huge nuanced distinct culture and the only reason they're kind of in shambles now is because they had to handle the last big incursion by the Delkir. Like
Mhm.
it makes sense. And then you have the monstrous nations, and
Yeah,
it
like
works so good.
Droam, man. Like
Yeah,
draw like it's
Droam.
like what like I'm so happy that Keith Baker released Exploring Eberron because like Droam has always intrigued me so much.
Such a
They're actually
cool idea.
yeah, like they're actually tied into my campaign a little bit because I have oh no, actually I can't say it because if my players listen to this, they'll be spoiled. Um yeah, so never mind.
Yeah. But no,
The
yeah, like
pains of being a DM.
yeah, Sisters of Sorakel and like how
Yeah.
they're like there is I've done a few different things for like Sharn mini adventures. And
Yeah.
I'm blanking on the name of that gang that kind of comes from Droam. But
Oh yeah, I know which ones you're not the Boromors.
yeah, not the Boromar clan, but the one that's like distinctly monstrous, and the whole point is like Sorakel is kind of like feeding them into other cities so they can then disperse drugs and destabilize governments.
Oh, that is so cool.
So cool. Like it's not explicit. Like I don't think, like I think there's some minor things like you have to read a lot of stuff to kind of like piece it together. I think the only reason I know it is because I've listened to like Keith Baker's podcast.
Yeah.
But he's like that is something that you could connect really easily, and you would be basically correct as like the effects of what are happening here.
That is the
Like
other cool thing about the fucking world, man, is how it is so structured, but it's wide open, like the
wide
Mournland.
open. Yeah, the Mournlands, like what happened, what was the morning? Like, was it and I think that's honestly that's honestly just to make that the centerpiece of an adventure or just a setting is such a cool idea. And the fact that like it basically not really like more or less immediately stopped fighting because nobody in
Yeah.
the world knows what happened. So like On Dare has no idea if like somebody else had like another nation is the one that did this, and everybody else thinks it's another nation, so they're all like too scared to attack everybody. It makes this, I think, what was it?
Powder keg.
It makes it powder keg. And one of the things that Keith Baker says is like, there was no victor of the Great War. There was only one decisive loser. And
Yeah,
it was
and it leaves
Sire.
people hungry, man. Oh,
Yeah,
Sire got fucked.
yeah, it
Like,
got
what
destroyed.
what do you think happened? What's your I don't wanna, like, what do you I don't necessarily wanna say what
I
happened to your Mournland,
I
but what do you think Keith Baker was maybe thinking of when he
So the books, I think we talked a little bit before this. You are reading you're reading his book series, right?
I'm reading, yeah, Sharn City of Towers right now, I think it's called, the first
Yeah.
book of the trilogy that Keith Baker
So
wrote.
his telling is actually like you can kind of piece together what his version is. So I'm not going to ruin it for you because
Oh,
that's
please
actually
don't
part of the
then.
book series. It's part of the book
Okay, don't
series.
then.
Um,
Oh, fuck, I didn't know that. Thank God for not spoiling that for me, man.
no problem. Yeah,
Woo!
if we hadn't talked about that, I may have ruined something for you.
Oh, that's
But yeah,
my heart's actually skipping right now.
yeah. So that's it's a 3-part book. The first one is in Sharn. The second one kind of drifts over to um crap.
Breland?
Not it's not in Breland. It's Zendrick. It goes to Zendrick.
Oh, really?
Um
Oh, cool. Zendrick, like
yeah.
the other continent.
Yeah, and then the third one, I will not spoil where it goes to. I
Oh.
haven't actually read that one. I just know I kind of like stumbled into a spoiler when I was like looking up the books. So that's the only
Uh,
reason I know. Um but yeah, I still got to read the third one. But it's a pretty solid book series, and I think it does a pretty good job of piecing together what he thinks happened to Sire, or
so
at least
it
his version.
is your version on par with his?
Hmm. I think I would use his as a sounding board. Um,
Okay.
it would probably depend on the story. Like the current one, because I am working on um I've been working on a setting, or not a setting, but like an adventure, a campaign.
Mhm.
And I don't know if I'm going to use that yet because it hasn't like come into it hard. Like I don't need that explanation yet, so I haven't really thought about it. If I do, once I get to that point, if they do like need to stop the next one or something like that, because I haven't written out the entire like what I think the adventure would go. I might use that as a sounding board, then jump off that. Um,
Oh.
but yeah, I think that heavily depends on where your story is. Because like, if you want to do like the Dragons of Arganessen, like if you really want that to be the center point of your story, you can say the morning was caused by the Dragons of
Yeah.
Arganessen.
Yep.
If you want the Lords of Dust, you can say it's Lords of Dust. If you want it to be like an Atlas Shrugged esque malevolent business decision that caused it, you make it House Cannith. Like
Yeah, it's
there are
so
some
cool,
ways.
man.
Yeah. So I think it really depends on who you want to be. Like, if you're going to have like a really central, big, bad, evil person in your story, like connect them to the morning is like a really easy way to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So do you like running Sharn? Like how do you find Sharn?
I've only run some one shots, so I've gotten heavy into Eberron, and then I kind of like locked myself up in other campaigns. So
Mhm.
it is the next one. Like if I do a TPK on any one of my currently existing campaigns, we're definitely doing a Sharn adventure.
Nice.
Um, but
I'm
I
running
really
Sharn
like
right
it.
now.
I really like it. I think it's such a cool idea. I just wish there was better maps of Sharn.
Yeah,
Um,
the maps of Sharn are pretty crappy, but Sharn's kind of a weird city in the way it's laid
Yeah, and
out too.
how vertical it is, I think it'd be really
Yeah.
hard to map, but it's also something that's kind of hard to wrap your head around
I
when you're
have a
talking about
real
like transversal and stuff like that.
I have a really, really hard time kind of wrapping my head around like how because it's just a bunch of towers, right? And the
Yeah.
towers themselves have different districts like within the towers and and stuff like that. And it's I don't know, I do have a hard time kind of wrapping my head around it. But one thing that I try to do is I just try to almost keep it vague enough where I don't know,
Mhm.
it doesn't really become too much of a focus point.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, but I'm running a detective noir adventure in Sharn right now, and it
I
is
like that.
so fun. My players are so into it. They're like being like little tiny detectives building case files and stuff like that. You saw the Holmes thing I think I posted in
Yeah.
like Discord. Yeah.
The Sharn
So
slasher.
Yeah, the Sharn Slasher essentially. Oh, I should show you like these little tiny Sharn Inquisitive newspaper articles that I write.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, they're a lot of fun too. I got that idea off of someone off Reddit, posted a newspaper, and I was like, oh, that is fucking genius way to like bring in like additional lore info into the world, right? Like,
Yeah, so I got so into Sharn, I actually spent maybe 5 days. So I've mostly crafted a one shot or kind of a small campaign, probably 3-4 hours. Not a campaign, but one shot. And I'm moving slowly but surely that I'm going to try and post it on the DMs Guild. But I actually for that I found an old style like AT&T like stock thing. I went through an MS Paint and some other things and like scraped all the stuff off of it and then like made it a House Kundarak bill for like money transfers.
oh, cool. Oh, do you
Um,
still have that?
I do. It's on Reddit. I put it on Reddit and it's somewhere on the Discord server for Eberron,
Oh, okay.
the
I'm gonna have to
official
check.
one.
It might maybe I've seen it already because I've seen a few of those, but like I need to make like bills or something because I they don't really use coinage too much. Well, they do, but like I agree with once you get up to like 200 coins, right? Like you gotta
Yeah,
start transferring bills.
yeah, and then also like even if it doesn't make sense to like use a banker's note, it's an automatic clue for an adventure. Like
Hmm.
the assassin on him had a folded up banker's note for like 500 gold. It was signed for everything except for the person that sent it. Like mystery. Like now you have to go to like House Kundarak and see if they're gonna like let you figure out who this came from. And it is a tool to progress a story. I love it so much.
Yeah,
Um,
it's really fucking awesome. Yeah, I the Dragonmark houses are just like they're super cool too. How they all flow into the world and stuff like
oh
and
yeah.
aberrant dragon marks. Now you can just slap those on people and stuff. It's awesome.
It's so good. I mean, I really like the 1920-ish feel,
Yeah, same. Oh, that's just I just sent you
like
the newspaper I
like
made.
robber baron included. Oh, that looks good. I was doing something pretty similar. So for this one shot, I had that banknote, and then I found some old found an old like a 1940s company's letterhead, and I kind of like blanked out all of the like original stuff, but it still had like the flowy little marks and stuff. And then I put this other company that I'd made up for the game, I put their kind of stuff over it, and it looks legit. But
Nice.
it's like such a cool way because it is a world where they would have like letterhead and like
Yeah.
people would be writing stuff like this and sending it around and mailing it.
Man, we haven't
Um,
even like touched base on like the lightning rail or the
oh yeah,
airships and
so
stuff,
good, so
right?
good.
Like it's crazy. I honestly could go on for like hours about this fucking world, to be
It's so
honest. Like,
fun. And honestly, I think too, one of the best things about Eberron is because of the area and how encompassing it is, you could do a Wild West adventure in Eberron. You
yep.
could be in like New Sire or whatever and be like Wild West. You can do a detective noir and Sharn. You could do like an actual you could do like a semi-traditional adventure in other parts of Corvair, or you could do like a psionic like spy struggle story just as easily with like the Dreaming
Yep.
Dark. There's just
Oh,
like
yeah.
there's just a little piece like if you've always wanted D&D but something else, you can use Eberron to get there. And I love it so much.
Yeah, and they do. They give you a nice broad, nice framework to use, and then but it's open enough for you to just do whatever the hell you want,
Yeah, no, it's amazing.
which is a really nice aspect of it. Yeah, so we are getting kind of tight on time here, but what do you have any like kind of like final thoughts or words or actually oh man, still got so many questions, but we are running out of time. Um yeah, why don't we do this? So, you prefer you're kind of mixed between being a player and a dungeon master, but what would you say is your favorite character you've ever played?
Favorite character I've ever played. I really like the character I play on Dice Populi Cult. I've kind of like I think he's my most lived in character. He's a lot of fun to play, and he's also just so different from the usual characters I
And
play.
that's in is that in Eberron also?
It's not in Eberron. It's a homebrew world that we
Oh, cool.
created
Okay.
specifically for the podcast. My second favorite, it was for like it was supposed to be a long campaign, but it only ended up being like 4 sessions. I like created this character called Des. She was like a cool homeless rogue. Um kind of had this kind of feel, and it was for this kind of like homebrew world, but I really liked that character, and it's one of the most disappointing things in my life that I only got to
Oh,
play her like 4 times before we ended that campaign.
yeah, yeah. That's a shame.
Yeah,
I so many people tell me of stories about them just fizzling, like their campaigns fizzling out, and that's I wish that didn't happen so much.
yeah. I think it was a homebrew world. It was supposed to be like basically zero magic, and it was supposed to be extremely difficult, like make a mistake and you die difficult.
Oh,
And I think the DM hadn't. I think he jumped the gun a little bit, trying to figure out the world mechanics, and then it just got a little complicated for him. And then also we were doing really well. I think he warned us that it was going to be difficult, so we made like relatively like maximized characters. Like I was a fighter rogue, so I was a fighter rogue with the crossbow expert feat. So I was pumping
okay.
out tons of damage, and everybody else was kind of like had really optimized builds because like he told us it was going to be super difficult. So why would we make like wussy characters that would die really easy, right? And most
Yeah,
of the weaker characters, because it's a zero magic world, like you can be a barbarian, you can be a fighter, and you can be a rogue, like all of which are pretty hardy, especially if you mix
yeah,
in fighter and rogue, right? So
yep.
I,
Oh,
I don't
that's
think he was prepared for that.
zero magic, eh? I don't know. I don't know how much I'd enjoy zero magic. Maybe limited magic, but
Yeah, he said it was going to start out zero and then there'd be opportunities to gain magic later. I don't know exactly how he kind of put that together. Maybe like you could
uh,
multi-class into like a wizard later or something. I'm not sure.
yeah. Maybe it'd be cool to like fucking find the magic. Maybe you got to go
Yeah.
find the source. That'd be fun. Start zero
Yeah.
magic, little adventure level 3. You know what I mean? By the time they're level 3, give them their magic.
So I
But
found out that there is a old school adventure. I'm blanking on the name right now, but you basically start at zero level. Like you are a
uh-huh.
commoner, you have like 4
Oh,
hit points. You don't even know how to use weapons, and like through the story, depending on the choices you make, the DM picks your class for you. So
oh,
at different
really?
yeah, at different points in the game, there like once you pick up a weapon, once you use it a couple of times, you become proficient in it. And you can do that a couple of times before it like the DM has to put its foot down. But there's like magical items that allow you to have certain like mage abilities, and if you use those a lot, you start like there's a like little pieces of paper that are in the module that you basically make check marks next to for like activities that they do to fit a certain criteria. Like uses magic, you put one in like a wizard or whatever or sorcerer, and then like, oh,
Oh,
they're
yeah,
using
okay.
swords, that's both paladin and like fighter. Oh, they're using like the big old axe, that kind of sounds barbarian. And then at the end you tally them all up, and whichever one is the greatest you end up becoming. um and that's how you become a first level character. You have a whole adventure before you become the first level.
What is my sorry, can you hear my dog? Did
I
you
heard him
hear
a little bit, yeah.
he was like freaking out and smacking his tail off of my fan. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. It was just
No,
really
you're
funny.
good.
Yes. Go on.
No, that was it. No,
Uh,
that's all I had to say.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's cool. I kind of like that idea though. Starting out at zero and like walking around and just I don't know, hitting
picking
rats
up
with a
hobbies
stick.
basically.
Yeah,
Yeah,
picking up hobbies. You're like, okay, I guess congratulations here. You are now a wizard.
yeah.
It's
You're
just
now a paladin.
oh, yay. Yeah, I've that's a really interesting idea. That'd be a fun session zero, maybe.
Yeah, you can kind of discover your character through playing. It'd be
Huh.
better. I think it'd be best for people that had never played before and don't have like a real concept of like what they want to be, but like
Yeah.
they're trying to figure out what they want to do. Like I
That's a really I wonder if there's shit like that on DM's Guild. There's gotta be
I think
something.
there I think there is a 5e guide to that one on DM's Guild. I'm sure somebody's probably redone it for 5e completely. I
Yeah.
have to remember the name. It's like Call to Adventure or something like that. I can't remember the name of it.
Huh. Yeah, that would be fun. I think that'd be very fun as a player too to
Oh,
do.
it'd be a trip.
Yeah, to just find out who your character is naturally. But yeah, so do you have any Shit, we didn't even really talk about your character that much, did we?
No, that's all right.
Yeah. Sorry, dude. Like I
If
said,
people
this is
want
a
to find
loot.
out about cults, they can tune in to Dice Populi.
Yeah, there you go. That's a little appetizer of cult there for you. He's a big bad evil dude, it sounds like. How do you
Kinda.
you're uh chaotic evil is his
Yes.
alignment, right?
Chaotic evil.
Do you guys place with alignment pretty strict? Like, do you guys use it?
No, we're not super strict on alignment. We're kind of free flowing, and there's definitely like I don't think every single one of cult's actions are like fit into like evil, but that's the whole thing about being chaotic. Nobody's supposed to be able to guess what you're gonna do
Yeah.
next. So, um, yeah, I don't think, and as far as I know, I don't think we've played like the like oh you can only pull up this sword if you're like lawful good. That hasn't come up or anything like that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. That's yeah, I don't know. I think yeah, I like to use alignment similar to what you're doing. It sounds like where it's
It's like
more
a
of a guide.
guide.
Yeah, exactly. Just a
It's just
guide.
it's just so you can write like I write it down on a piece of paper to be like, if you're really not sure what you want to do in that situation, be like, "All right, well, I am like evil. I would want to get something out of this situation. I'm not going to do this for free. Yeah, I'll do it, but pay me money, or I'll do it, but you owe me a favor." Just something to think about while I'm playing.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty much how I use alignment too with my players. Well, Ryan, do you have any final last words here?
My final words. Oh, listen to Dice Populi. I enjoyed a lot. We have a lot of fun recording it. It's a lot of fun to listen to. And be nice to each other. It's a hard world out currently, and the least we could do is just kind of be decent to each other and have fun whenever we can.
Yeah, man, I agree with that statement 100%. Everybody be kind and nice, and let's just chill and play some D&D.
Exactly. Play more D&D. Like this
Yes.
is the perfect time to play D&D. You have nothing going on probably in your evenings, or at least you shouldn't. And play some D&D. You know, buy like the 5e rules, like the basic rules are free. They are just
Yeah,
freely
yep.
available. You can pick it up. You can play whenever you want. PDFs for the player's handbook go for pretty cheap. They're like $20 if you get them off of like other various services online. Uh Pick up some
Yeah.
D&D and play.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming and chilling and hanging out and talking. I think
Yeah,
that was a
thank
lot
you
of
so much for
fun.
having me. Yeah, this is great.
Yeah, it's so awesome just chilling and talking with people that are like similar, that have similar interests and shit. So
Oh, for sure. This was a blast. This was a lot of fun.
yeah, I'm glad you had a good time. Well, with that, I'll say goodbye to everyone. So yeah, see ya.
All right, goodbye everybody.